We're continuing the shir in Sichos HaRan. We're up to paragraph Reish Tzadik Gimel 293. Rav Nosson says that I once heard somebody say over in Rabbi Zal's name regarding somebody that had spoken to Rabbi Zal, and Rabbi Zal told this person to be careful to daven with a lot of kavona, with a lot of concentration. And Rabbi Zal said to this person that just like the Gemara says, hakoil mo'irer hakavona, that when a person davens completely silent, where there's no sound coming forth from their tefillah, very often that'll hurt the person's concentration. That'll make it much easier for the person's mind to drift and wander from what they're saying. They're not going to be thinking of the words that they're saying, which means that tefillah is going to be much less effective. The Gemara says that a tefillah without kavona is like a guf without a neshama. Just like a body without a neshama, without a soul, is dead. It can't move at all. That body can't do anything. It can't produce anything. It can't affect anything. So too a tefillah, when a person's davening without kavona, obviously that tefillah also can't really be too effective. So the Gemara says that one of the ways that a person could help themselves in terms of having kavona is to make sure that there's koil in their tefillah, that when they're davening, they say the words where they hear what they're saying. Naturally, this excludes the tefillah of Shmoneh Esrei, which is supposed to be said balachash, silently. But other than that, whenever a Jew is davening, a Jew davens out loud, where you hear sound coming from his tefillah. So Rabbi Zal says that this is what the Gemara says, and the reverse is true also, that there are times when a person will be davening in silence, and he won't be able to light himself up. He won't be able to awaken himself and activate himself in tefillah. And Rabbi Zal says if the person will pull their concentration together and try to really concentrate on the words of the tefillah, on what they're saying, they're going to see that the concentration alone is going to bring them to daven out loud. It's the kavona will be mo'irer the koil, that the concentration on the tefillah will arouse the person to daven out loud, and that's obviously what makes tefillah effective. And Rav Nosson writes, V'chein nire b'chush kama pomim. People that'll try this see that this happens very often, that it works this way, that a person first doesn't feel aroused to davening out loud, but it's because his mind isn't really concentrating on what he's saying. And when the person starts looking at the siddur, looking in the siddur, and really concentrating on what they're saying, that alone will bring them to want to raise their voice in tefillah. And we've mentioned this many times before. Unfortunately, I really don't think it's helped yet, to a degree. And the Gemara says that hoicheach toichiach, that there's a mitzvah to reprimand. When you see a person doing something that's not right, or that's not as good as it should be, the Gemara says that a Jew is required to inform, to notify the person that they're doing something not right. And the Gemara says the fact that the Torah says, hoicheach toichiach, reprimand, this comes to teach us that even if a person has to reprimand again and again, they're still obligated to do it and hope that maybe on the 100th time, maybe the other person will get the message. If there's anything that a person would not want a shul to resemble, it's a cemetery, it's a morgue. Because tefillah, especially the way Rabbi Zal presents it, is the exact opposite of that. Tefillah is called life. Rabbi Zal quotes the posek in Tehillim, where the posek says, Tefillah lokel chayoy. Davening to Hashem, that's my life. And Rabbi Zal says that a person should know that in terms of ruchnius, if a person wants to know how alive they are or how dead they are, a person could simply measure it by the tefillah. According to how awake their tefillah is, according to how much kavona is in it, according to the koil in the tefillah, this is what determines to what extent that person is considered alive by Rabbeinu Zal standards. Unfortunately, there are many shuls, especially when they're davening shachris early in the morning, I can't imagine what the reason is. Once a person knows that this is what Rabbeinu Zal's advice is, and that this is considered so important, and yet, halavai, we should be zocher that this item should be corrected. But in any case, Rabbeinu Zal stresses that this is called tefillah. Tefillah is kavona and koil. It's davening with kavona, with concentration, and it's also a person bringing forth sound in tefillah. This doesn't contradict at all the fact that a person's not supposed to be ostentatious. A person should never allow there to be in a situation where they're in a certain place and they stick out. The person is boilate, which means everybody else is davening a certain way. One person is davening much differently, and it's very noticeable. A person wouldn't want that to be the case. However, at the same time, oy to that person, chas v'sholom, who would allow their shul to be absent from sound, to be asleep, or chas v'sholom, Rabbeinu Zal says a level further, not to be living in terms of tefillah. The next item, paragraph Reish Tzadik Dalet, 294, Rav Nosson Zal says that I heard Rabbeinu Zal say that throughout the month of Elul, when there is a minig Yisrael to say Tikuney Zohar, this was obviously more common in those days during Rabbeinu Zal's times, especially among the Chassidim, since a lot of Chassidus, a lot of the world of Chassidus is based on the Yesodos, on the foundation of the Mekubolim. It was a custom at that time for people to read the Tikuney Zohar during the month of Elul, and also to say more Tehillim than they were normally used to. The Matei Ephraim brings that a person should make sure to say at least 10 chapters of Tehillim a day throughout the month of Elul, which is a month of Teshuva, and plus other additional bakoshos that people add at the end of Tefillah. So Rav Nosson Zal says that Rabbeinu Zal commented about this, about the fact that people stay later in shul during the month of Elul than they normally do, and they read the Tikuney Zohar also with a special nigun. There's a special song, a sing-song voice that's used in reading the Tikuney Zohar. Rabbeinu Zal said you should know that the fact that Jews stay in shul an extra half hour and they fast for that period of time, meaning they delay their breakfast or their meal for that extra amount of time, that suffering, and again, Rabbeinu Zal wasn't a dramatist. It's not as if he's trying to say that it's so terrible that a person give up an extra half hour for Hashem, but at the same time, Rabbeinu Zal said this is something that Hashem definitely acknowledges. The fact that a Yid is willing to put in that extra half hour and delay their meal for that period of time, and also the special nigun that's used for reading Tikunei Zohar, from these items are affected dvorim gevoyim ugedolim lamala. These items affect tremendous tikkunim in heaven. There are major things that are accomplished by the fact that Yidden go that extra mile. They show a certain extra level of devotion during the month of Elul than they do at other times. The next paragraph, Reish Tzadikei, Rav Nosson Zal says that I heard people say over in the name of Rabbeinu Zal regarding a person being mechazik themselves in tefillah, meaning that there are certain people that could sometimes think that the fact that I'm not that religious, the fact that I'm not that great a Talmud Chacham, I'm not that great at tzadik, and certainly the fact that I've committed many sins, this obviously weakens my tefillah and makes my tefillah much less important than a person who doesn't have these many sins and that's on a higher level than me. And Rabbeinu Zal said, the fact is that a person should know that the opposite is true. That bedafka, such a person who's far from Hashem, a person who has committed many sins, that person also is a very important ingredient in the shleimus hatfila of Bnei Yisrael. In order for the tefillah of the Jewish people to be considered complete, it's not considered complete unless it has included in it the tefillos of Rishoim, or Poshei Yisrael, or people who are not that religious or not that good in religion. We know that the Gemara says that one of the most important sacrifices that was brought in the Beis Hamikdash was the Ketores, a special offering of incense, which was made from a combination of 11 different spices. And one of the 11 spices, the chelbana, the Gemara says was something that had a very foul odor. And the Gemara explains that this corresponds to those people whose lives give off a foul odor, which means, Rachmana litzlan, they commit sins, they do things that Hashem despises, and this is called a reach ra, chas v'sholem, a bad odor. And yet we find that the Gemara says very clearly that if the kohen would try to offer this sacrifice and exclude the chelbana, leave out the chelbana, it was not acceptable to Hashem. The chelbana added a shleimus, that's what made the Ketores complete. And therefore, so too, Rabbi Arizal says, if a person's ever feeling low, feeling that they're not that good, they're not that religious, that alone should give a person encouragement to say that that's why my tefillah is very necessary, because I represent a certain section that only when I'm in this position can I fill that need. The need for chelbana and Ketores, the need for Poshe Yisrael to be included in the tefillah. In fact, the Gemara says a very clear statement that any fast, any time that the Jews have a fast day, and Rishoim are excluded from the fast, they don't participate, that fast is not accepted by Hashem. Kavyochel, there's a special nachas that Hashem gets when people that are far from Kedusha make an effort on their level to do what they can. It's also brought that this is the meaning of the concept of tefillah b'tzibur. When we talk about a Jew, the Gemara stresses that when a Jew davens alone, that tefillah is very carefully examined by Malachim in heaven and by Hashem himself, and it's very difficult for such a tefillah to be presented in a way that will be totally acceptable by Hashem. In fact, there are many cases where such a tefillah, chas v'shalom, is torn up. That's the wording that the Sforim use. It's torn up by the Malachim before it even gets to where it's supposed to get to, because of the fact that it's incomplete, it's lacking in kavana, or it's lacking in other necessary ingredients that a tefillah is supposed to have. However, the Gemara says that when a Jew davens tefillah b'tzibur, when a person davens in a group, which means at least a minimum of 10 people, the Gemara says that tefillah is never rejected by Hashem. In fact, the Malachim are not given permission to examine such a tefillah. That goes right past them without them able to have the opportunity to look, to examine, to question in any way. The word tzibur, the Meforshim point out, is also an acronym for the term, the tzadik stands for tzadikim, the beis stands for beinonim, and the vav reish stands for urishoim. The tefillah b'tzibur is when you have a combination of these three different types of people joining together, which means that a tzibur, a shul, is not considered a shul if it does not have rishoim in it, if it doesn't have people in it that are far from Hashem, that are in the process of trying to come close to Hashem. If a minyan is made up of all tzadikim, in a sense that minyan is lacking a certain necessary ingredient for giving Hashem nachas. And our Rebbe Zichron Avrocha once said that when we say in the Shemon Esrei, Ki ato shomea tfilas kol peh amcha Yisrael barachamim, you Hashem listen and accept the tefillah of every single person with kindness. The word barachamim is bigimatria b'tzibur, exactly. That what guarantees a level of rachmanis on the part of Hashem, that Hashem will definitely not reject anybody's tefillah, that's when when the person is a member of a tzibur. When they're part of a tzibur, that's a guarantee that no matter who it is, that everybody's tefillah that's part of the tzibur will be accepted. So here Rabbi Arizal stressed that when a person finds that they're looking at themselves as being a rasha, that should be an encouragement also for davening. That I definitely have a position in the shul and a position in the korbanos, and my position is needed as much as anybody else's to bring a shleimus to the tefillah. The next paragraph, Reish Tzadik Vov, Rabbi Arizal says that during davening, a Jew should attach themselves to the tzadikim of their generation. This doesn't mean only to the tzadikim of their generation, it means to the tzadikim of their generation and also to all the tzadikim of previous generations. And it's based on this item, based on the fact that Rabbi Arizal said that this is something that should be done, that there was a custom among Rabbi Arizal's followers that before they would begin any tefillah, they would first say the words Hareini Mekasher Atzmi L'chol HaTzadikim Shebedoreinu, that I hereby attach myself to all the tzadikim of our generation, and then also U'Lechol HaTzadikim Amitim Sheikh Neofor Kedoshim Asher B'Oretz Heima, and also to all the tzadikim who have already passed away. This item is mentioned here in Sichos HaRan, and it's also mentioned in 2 chapters in Likutei Moharan. And in these 2 places, Rabbi Arizal gives 2 distinct reasons as to why this is so important. We know that the Torah says that when Hashem gave the Jews the privilege of building a Mishkan for Hashem, Hashem said, V'osu li mikdosh v'shochanti b'soicham, that Bnei Yisrael should make for me a place, and I will rest among you. Once this place will be established, the Mishkan, Kavyochel, Hashem said, I guarantee that my presence will be there. In order to establish this place, what was necessary? There were all kinds of required ingredients: gold, silver, copper, wool, linen, all different kinds of things that went into it. And Hashem instructed Moshe Rabbeinu to call out to all the Yidden that each and every single Jew who feels generous, who feels that they want to be zeicha to take part in this mitzvah of preparing a place for Hashem, each and every single person should contribute. The posek says that all the Yidden brought from whatever they were able to bring. This, whoever had wood brought wood, gold, silver, all the different ingredients. And the posek says, Vayoviu hamishkan el Moshe. They brought the Mishkan to Moshe Rabbeinu. The Zohar HaKodesh says that why does the pasuk stress that all of these things were brought to Moshe Rabbeinu? Everything had to be brought to Moshe Rabbeinu? They couldn't do anything without him? I mean, fine, he told them to bring things, and then he should have established a few managers and everything, and let them carry on, let them take care of the actual building. Why does the pasuk stress this point, Vayoviu hamishkan el Moshe, that all the ingredients had to be brought to Moshe Rabbeinu? The Zohar HaKodesh says, because the tzadik, Moshe Rabbeinu, is the only one who knows la'ayla shaifa b'shaifa, to build the koimas hashchina. Now that's to build, to put together the model, kaviochel, into which the light of Hashem could be placed. That knowledge is something that only tzadikim possess. True, they can't do it themselves. They need Bnei Yisrael to bring them the ingredients, all the different ingredients. But as far as putting together these ingredients to make just the right formula and just the right mix that's needed to draw the presence of the Shekhinah there, that's an avodah that's only for the tzaddik. It's only tzaddikim that possess this knowledge. And therefore, the Zohar HaKodesh says, all the Yidden had to know that they had to come on to Moshe Rabbeinu for this. Fine, they could all contribute, but as far as putting it together, none of them, and not all of them put together, were not in a position to build the Mishkan without Moshe Rabbeinu. Rabbi Arizal says that so too in terms of our tefillos. The Gemara says that the tefillos, the Beis HaKnesses, the shuls in which Bnei Yisrael are mispalel today, those are in place of the Beis HaMikdash or the Mishkan. The pasuk says, Ki beisi beis tefillah yikorei lechol ha'amim. Hashem says, my house, the Beis HaMikdash or the Mishkan, are called a Beis Tefillah. And in fact, we know that the Shulchan Aruch calls a shul a Mikdash Ma'at, which means our version of a Beis HaMikdash. What do we use as ingredients to build with in a shul? The answer is our tefillos. Rabbi Nachman says each and every single tefillah of a yid represents an aver of the Shechina Kaviyachol. And the purpose of our tefillos is to build up the Shechina to a shleimus. Each and every single Jew participates in helping to be mashlim the koimas hashchina. Just as the Arizal says that the Gemara discusses many times the sum total of neshamos of Bnei Yisrael as being 600,000. The totality of the Am Yisrael is represented by 600,000 souls, 600,000 neshamos. The Arizal says that the word Shechina, spelled b'milui, the shin spelled the way it's pronounced, shin yud nun, the chaf spelled the way it's pronounced, chaf pei, and yud vav dalid, and so on and so forth. The word Shechina b'milui is b'gematria tov reish aleph, 601. Aleph in Hebrew means one, or elef, 1,000. It's the same word. So that the Arizal says the Shechina has a one-to-one correspondence with the 600,000 neshamos of Bnei Yisrael. As Bnei Yisrael achieve shleimus, Kaviyachol the Shechina achieves shleimus. However, the one that makes it happen, the one that brings the neshamos of Bnei Yisrael together, and the one that brings their tefillos together, and knows which tefillah should be a window, which tefillah should be a doorknob, which tefillah should be a ceiling, which tefillah should be a floor, in order to build this binyan for the Shechina, that's only the tzadik. And therefore Rabbi Nachman says that not chas v'sholom that we daven to the tzadik, we daven to Hashem, but we don't plan to hand over, to deliver our tefillah directly from our hands into Hashem's hands. We conceptualize our tefillah as gold and silver, as these different ingredients for building. When we say Hareni Mekasher in the beginning of our tefillah, we're implying that this tefillah that I'm going to say now, I'm turning it over into the hands of the tzadikim. And I'm asking them to assume responsibility. They know what to do with it. They know how to polish it. They know how to sand it down. They know how to trim it. They know exactly where it's supposed to fit into the total picture. And this is what my kavona is in being mekasher my tefillah to these tzadikim. This is one way that Rabbeinu Zal explains the importance of this. This is presented in Torah Beis in Likutei Moharan Chelik Aleph, and then in Torah Tes, chapter 9 in Likutei Moharan Chelik Aleph, Rabbeinu Zal mentions another reason. We know that the Gemara and the Sforim HaKadoshim discuss the fact that there isn't only one gate where tefillos enter in heaven. The Gemara says that each and every single shevet, each and every single one of the 12 tribes has their own shar, their own entranceway in Shamayim, through which their tefillos are supposed to come through. Naturally, just as lahavdil in Gashmias, if a person is supposed to go through one door and they go through a wrong door, you can assume that they're not going to be able to accomplish in the wrong place what they could accomplish if they go to the right place. If Kaviyachol Hashem in His infinite wisdom understands that there have to be these separate places where the tefillos of each shevet goes to, then we could understand that it would be a kilkul. It would mess things up if a person's tefillah goes through the wrong entrance. The question is, how can a person know to be able to direct their tefillah to make sure that it goes through the right shar? Rabbeinu Zal says again, this is not something that an ordinary Jew is capable of guaranteeing. This is one of the avodas of tzadikim. The tzadikim are the ones who play traffic cop. And they're the ones who have the kedusha, the holiness, and the status by Hashem, that they're in a position, those tefillos that are given over to them, they're in a position to direct them to wherever they know it should go. The tzaddik knows exactly which door it should go through, or at certain times which gates are closed. Lahavdil in Gashmias, there are times that a certain lane is crowded, and you have to reroute something through a different entrance. Lahavdil in Kiddusha also. The Gemara says that there are times that certain gates in heaven are closed. The Gemara says that since the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed, the Sharei Tefillah are basically assumed to be closed. It's the Sharei Demois that are open. The gates of tears in heaven, those are open. So what happens when a Jew davens a tefillah, and that Jew isn't privileged to have tears in their tefillah? And yet the person would want to be able to take advantage of somebody else's tears and be able to have their tefillah go in through the gateway of tears. The answer is, if a person is zeicha to be attached to a tzadik, and if a person is zeicha bedafka to attach their tefillah to the tzadik, to be mekasher themselves before they daven to the tzadik, by doing that they're giving the tzadik permission, and they're giving the tzaddik the right to be able to do this for them, to be able to help their tefillah. Now, a person would say that tzaddik needs my permission, he needs me to tell him it's okay, and the answer is most definitely, because we find many examples where a tzaddik is not in a position to help a person until the person does something to clearly prove that they want that help. The Torah says, "Bisvosov chibduni, v'liboy rochak mimeni." There are times that a person is willing to give lip service. They're willing to say something respectful, even though they don't really feel it inside. So here also, there could be certain cases where a person thinks they want their tefillah to be the right way and everything, but in terms of really meaning it deep down inside, there could be a lot that's lacking in the kavanah. And Rashi HaKodesh in Chumash gives an example that when Avimelech had to come on to the tefillah of Avraham Avinu, he needed Avraham Avinu to be mispal for him. Rashi HaKodesh says that Avimelech gave Avraham Avinu a present, a gift, so that Avraham Avinu should be able to daven for him. Without the gift, he couldn't daven for him. The answer is, without the gift, the tefillah would not have been as effective. A tzaddik can't come before Hashem and say, Hashem, this person wants my help, if the person didn't really ask for the tzaddik's help. And this concept of a person saying, Hareini Mekasher, is a way of saying that I realize that I'm imperfect. I realize that I alone, on my own merit, cannot guarantee that my tefillah is going to be the way it should be, or that my tefillah is going to get to where it's supposed to get to. However, one thing I am confident, that there are definitely tzaddikim alive in this generation, and that there were also tzaddikim in the past, and they definitely do have the ability to take the tefillahs of the entire Am Yisrael, and be mesader it, and make sure it gets to where it's supposed to get to. This item, this eitz of the Hareini Mekasher, is something that could also be done besides tefillah. When a Jew is going to do any mitzvah, if a person wants to ensure, again, that mitzvah will accomplish what it's supposed to accomplish, and that in terms of building the koimas hashchina, in terms of bringing about a yichud kutshabrichu shchinte, we know that there are sforim that write that a mitzvah is supposed to affect certain things. Naturally, whether the mitzvah will affect everything it's supposed to depends to a great degree on the one that's doing it. How pure their intentions are, how perfect they are in knowing all the rules and regulations of exactly how this mitzvah needs to be done. But there is a concept of protectia. Lahavdil, just as on earth, there are certain cases where a person themselves, on their own merit, can't necessarily be zeicha, and yet if you know the right person, if you have the right connection can bring something through much more easily than somebody else with more money and more kishroinos. This one would have a greater advantage. This is why the Zohar Kodesh and the Gemara mention the expression Zanvo da Aryeh, that the tail of a lion is still part of the lion, and it's better for a person to be the tail of a lion than the head of a fox. The lion represents the chief tzaddik. The Gemara discusses different rabbis of the Gemara, and how one said, how could you compare me to him when he's a lion, the son of a lion, and I'm the lion, the son of a fox? comparing different levels of greatness among tzaddikim to animals of different levels of strength, lahavdil. Here also the Gemara stresses that even if a person is a tail of the lion, which means he's attached to the lion, but he's way in the back. He's the furthest part from the moyach of the lion, from the most important part of the lion. Still he travels with the lion, and he gets all the benefits. Who's afraid of a tail of a lion? I mean, all you need is a little stick to destroy the tail of a lion. But people aren't crazy enough to tamper with the tail of a lion because they know that the tail is connected to the rest, and it's not the tail that's noikein, it's the head of the lion that avenges the tail. And here also, lahavdil, when we talk about a person who has the awesome privilege of being zeicha to be attached to tzaddikim, that person looks at themselves at worst as being a concept of a tail of the lion, with the assurance that they go with the protectia of the lion himself. This is an important point. The question is, let's say a person feels that they're attached to the greatest tzaddik. If that's the case, does that person need to come on to other tzaddikim in any way? And the answer is that I believe this is a mistake that many people could make. If a person simply looks at the example of Rabbeinu Zal's advice, Rabbeinu Zal praised his sefer. Let's take one item as an example. Rabbeinu Zal said about his sefer, the Likutei Moharan, that this is one of the most outstanding sforim that was ever introduced to the world. And Rabbeinu Zal told his Talmidim that when this sefer was introduced to the world, this is the Aschalta de Geula. This is the beginning of Moshiach's coming. The fact that this sefer, this light, was introduced into the world. Rabbeinu Zal said that each and every single chapter in the Likutei Moharan, there's close to 400 chapters in Likutei Moharan, each and every single chapter contains in it the entire Torah. The entire Torah Shebechsav, Torah Shebal Peh, Shulchan Aruch, Kabbalah, everything. If a person would take a chapter in Likutei Moharan and study it the right way, they would be able to see in a chapter the entire Torah. One of Rabbeinu Zal's Talmidim, actually one of Rav Nosson Zal's Talmidim, Rabbi Nachman Zal said that just in case anybody has any doubts, a little kid like me will show you an example. And he took the entire Shulchan Aruch, all 4 volumes of Shulchan Aruch, Orachaim, Yerodea, Choshen Mishpat, Even Ezer, consisting of close to 2,000 chapters of halacha, and took the first chapter in Likutei Moharan, which is 1 page, and he showed how that page contains in it all of the halachos that are found in all 4 sections of Shulchan Aruch, to show it as an example. So a person would say, therefore, certainly a person that's attached to Rabbeinu Zal has no excuse, no justification whatsoever for learning any other sforim, because everything you need is right here. And yet we know Rabbeinu Zal instructed his Talmidim, beferish, very clearly, to learn the Torah Shebechsav, to learn the Torah Shebal Peh, to learn all the Shulchan Aruchs, to learn Mesilas Yeshorim, to learn Reishis Chochma, to learn the Sefer HaTanya. There was certain sforim that he even singled out beferish, such as these that I'm mentioning. The question is why? And the answer is that even though we know and we believe that there is a tzadik in every generation who is koileh all the other tzaddikim, the fact is that tzaddik wants those that are attached to him to also be attached to all the others. There's no question of leaving out, ignoring the others because I'm attached here. On the contrary, if I believe that this tzaddik is the greatest one, then I believe that what makes him great is that he's a klolius of all the others, number 1, and number 2, that he's plugged in perfectly well to all the others. We find Rabbeinu Zal at times sent his Talmidim to other tzaddikim for a bracha, different times, and many different examples where he stressed that there definitely is a kesher, a need for a kesher with these other tzaddikim. Rabbeinu Zal stressed the saying of the Sefer Shemas HaTzaddikim, that reading the names of all tzaddikim represents making a connection with these different tzadikim, and thereby being able to draw upon oneself the zechus of all the good deeds that each and every one of those tzaddikim did. By mentioning his name, Zecher Tzadik Livrocha. When you mention a tzaddik's name, you remind Hashem of all the different fantastic things that tzaddik did during his whole life, and that opens a door by Hashem, that arouses Hashem's Rahmanas. So there's no question at all that we consider both important. The concept of a Rosh Bayis, the concept of a leading tzaddik, but not that that's Mavatel the other tzaddikim. A person definitely would want to be attached more so, Aseh L'chorav, a concept of having a Rebbe Muvhok, but not that eliminating a person from learning Mikol Malamdai Hiskalti, from learning from other Sforim, other Rabbonim also.
Is it sufficient just to say that you have this concept? With at least one tzaddik, it's not sufficient. With one tzaddik, you must do more than just say, you can't say, I want to be a Christian and not do anything. So, but with all that tzaddikim, it's sufficient.
No, I would think that with all the other tzaddikim also, it's a matter of learning their advice. It's a matter of respecting them in every way that a person can, showing the right respect for them, whatever that means, whether it's learning their sforim, or whether it's being mechaven to really want that all of them should do their part. In other words, we don't, even though, for example, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai made a statement in the Gemara saying that if there's any problem, if Hashem has any complaints in a sense to everybody else in the world, my zechus alone will be enough to support the entire world. And yet still, we know for sure that all the other Tanoim that played a role in that generation, and certainly the Talmidim of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai himself, the Chavraya that he functioned with, there was a need for each and every one of them. Each and every one of them was doing something besides what he was doing. The next paragraph, Reish Tzadik Zayin, Rav Nosson Zal says that Rabbeinu Zal spoke to us many times about the following item. Sheritzoinoi chozok ma'oid, that Rabbeinu Zal wanted very much that we should go with his shiurim. We should walk with his shiurim, meaning that a person should take one of Rabbeinu Zal's shiurim, a chapter in Likutei Moharan, and live with that for, let's say, 2-3 months. Live totally wrapped up in that shiur, in that chapter in Likutei Moharan, meaning that all the person's tefillos and all the person's avodos should be plugged into that chapter, meaning any mitzvah. For example, if a person, Rabbeinu Zal gave a shiur in Likutei Moharan where he spoke about Yira, the midah of Yira. If a person would want to connect every single item in religion to Yira, if a person knows enough about the Torah, they could do it without any problem. For example, the mitzvah of tefillin. A person putting on tefillin in the morning would definitely be able to connect his putting on tefillin to a shiur that Rabbeinu Zal gave about fear of Hashem. Because the Gemara says that one of the main concepts of the mitzvah of tefillin is V'ro kol ha'amim ki shem Hashem nikro lecha v'yoru mimeka. That tefillin is a symbol of fear, awe. That when a non-Jew sees a Jew wearing the tefillin, this is supposed to put a pachad on him. So we see how the mitzvah of tefillin is mekusher to the union of yira. And so too a person could actually go from every single avodah we find in Likutei Halachos, for example. Rav Nosson Zal does this many times. He takes a chapter in Likutei Moharan and he takes us for a walk through the entire Torah, through all the different holidays, through all the different important events in Jewish history, showing how this chapter in Likutei Moharan is a pirush on all of those items. So here Rav Nosson Zal says that Rabbeinu Zal wanted his Talmidim to take these shiurim seriously. Not that a person comes into a shiur, he listens to what's being said, and he walks out not writing it down in his mind and heart, not spending hours of tefillah, begging Hashem to be zecher, to be mekayim, everything that was said in that shiur, and not trying to use his brain to expand the shiur, to be able to see what the other applications of this are, but the opposite. Rabbeinu Zal wanted a person, his Talmidim, to take each shiur and make a project out of it, and actually work on it for a few months. davening, trying to work on every single aspect of what's mentioned in that shir, and to improve myself through each and every one of those nekudos. And then when a person feels that they've gone as far as they could with one chapter, to go on to the next chapter, and use that for a few weeks or a few months, or the maximum that the person is able to do. And Rav Nosson writes, "V'diber kamo pa'omim mizeh." Rabbi Nachman spoke about this many times. Ashrei mi sheyoches bozeh. Fortunate is that person who's zeicha to be holding by this, to take it that seriously. And here it pays again to note the importance that this term being attached to a tzadik or being a chassid of a certain Rebbe is not anywhere near as is not to be taken anywhere near as lightly as certain people might. If a person looks at how Rabbi Nachman how serious Rabbi Nachman wanted his followers to take their connection to him and to take his shurim, a person says they're connected to a tzaddik, it doesn't mean, it's not by touch, it's not by holding his hand, it's not by looking at his picture. The kesher to a tzaddik, the ikar kesher to tzaddikim throughout all generations was through their Torah, through their teachings, through their advice, to the fact that the tzaddik brought that person closer to Hashem through his shiurim. That was the means, that was the main kesher between Moshe Rabbeinu and Yehoshua. It didn't matter to Yehoshua if Moshe Rabbeinu was 5'8" or 7 feet tall, or any other nekuda. The ikar shebikrim in the kesher was that every time he had an opportunity to learn something from him, that was what counted. That's what made the connection between the Rebbe and the student. Rabbi Nachman quotes a posek in Chumash right before Moshe Rabbeinu was about to pass away, where Moshe Rabbeinu and Yehoshua went into an ohel, a tent together, where Moshe Rabbeinu passed over to Yehoshua all of his knowledge and the ruach, the ruach of kedusha that Moshe Rabbeinu had, and certainly in the case of Rabbi Nachman, the purpose in coming to him wasn't to chap shirayim, it wasn't to get kugel, it wasn't to get brachas for parnasa. The purpose that he wanted people to come to him for was to seek to improve themselves in terms of religion, closeness to Hashem, both beinodam lamokoim and beinodam lachaveroi. And Rabbi Nachman took his shiurim very seriously, to the extent that he was willing to have his talmidim make such a serious project out of it. Halavai, we should be zeicha to take these words serious and to take full advantage. The Gemara says in Chagiga, there's a long discussion in the Gemara as to what the definition of a shoite is. How do we define a fool in Yiddishkeit? And the Gemara presents a whole bunch of different alternatives and discusses each and every one of them, and disproves, shows how this couldn't be the most accurate definition of shoite. And at the end of a whole major discussion, the Gemara says the final word is that the best suited definition of shoite is hama'abed mashanoislim loi, a person who throws away something precious that's given to them. When somebody's given something valuable, a treasure, and they don't take it serious, and now how is a person ma'abed? How does a person lose something? The Gemara says it's very simple. Hesech hadas. A person's holding a briefcase that cost $50, and the briefcase has important papers in it, and the person puts it down for a minute and then walks away from it and forgets to take it. What made them lose that briefcase? It's the fact that for 1 minute they weren't thinking about the briefcase. If a person is thinking about something constantly, it's impossible to lose that item. The whole concept of an Aveda comes through a Hesech Hadas. And so too, especially, there certainly isn't any greater treasure than the teachings that a person receives from their rabbi. And if a person, chas v'sholom, is ma'abe that, a person shows that it's not important enough, it's not serious enough to hold on to, and to use and reuse, that would certainly, chas v'sholom, represent fulfilling this title of shoite. Halavai, we should be zeicha to draw upon ourselves the das hakodesh of Rabbi Nachman, and to be zeicha to understand what Rabbeinu Zal wanted from us, and to put enough tefillos into it. Rav Nosson Zal once said at the end of one of his shiurim, if he gave a shiur, those people that was zeicha to learn Likutei Halachos know that each one of his shiurim was enough to take a dead person and bring him back to life, to be mechayim esim. That's how powerful his divrei Torah were. And yet, at the end of one of his shiurim, Rav Nosson Zal said that our words, if you don't spend hours of his spoidedus begging Hashem to be mekayim them, binechayich gornisht mekana, then I don't envy your position, chas v'sholom. Meaning, you'll be very sorry. A person who's zeicha to hear these kind of words and doesn't make it their business to follow up, to do what they need to follow up, that person is certainly held accountable for that. We should be zeicha in the zechus of emunas tzadikim and learning the words of tzadikim to get to see the coming of Moshiach.